when the scientific consensus on the threat solidified, renewables were too expensive and inefficient to replace fossil fuels, and, furthermore, that people did not consider global warming to be an imminent threat, which meant that there was no public alarm to propel political action, a mobilized populace being a necessary precondition to break the hold of fossil fuels on the global economy. These are not trivial arguments, but they aren't true, as I will explain. We could have taken action, and it's important to understand why we didn't, because the reason points directly to what is likely to happen next and what we can do about it. Many factors, of course, explain society's response to the discovery that our own actions are changing the climate. Looming over all of them has been the role of business and finance. Indeed, the business world has been the master puppeteer in terms of influencing public awareness, politicians, even the presentation of the science. Looking back at the history of the modern climate change era, we see that if the business community does not want something to happen, it usually doesn't. Obviously, there are many competing interests in the business community. That said, the record shows which voices were dominant at critical points during the climate change era. During most of that time, the dominant messaging came from the wide spectrum of interests related to fossil fuels, with the support of the even broader community of business interests who shared an anti-regulatory bias. As we will see, these voices outweighed the discoveries of scientists and the ever more alarming signals coming from the climate itself. From the beginning, business interests have proved adept at reframing the issue, dismissing the risks, demonizing the scientists, and defaming those seeking action as elitist dilettantes who want to tell you what to do and take away your job. The posture of the business community also figured in the biggest missed opportunity of the climate change era, as the giant emerging economies were making decisions at the beginning of their push for industrial development and expansion of their energy infrastructures. Given a choice between renewables and fossil fuels, almost all chose coal. The greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions of the massive build-out that followed have much more than outweighed all the efforts, such as they've been, of the developed nations to reduce their dependence on carbon to power their economies. Indeed, in 2019, China alone emitted more greenhouse gases than all 38 developed nations in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, combined. The one thing the business and finance community could not and cannot influence is reality itself, although it has proved adept at distorting the public perception of the impacts of changing climate that have been staring us in the face. As these impacts have become more frequent and intense, they have broken through the fog of disinformation disseminated by fossil fuel interests. In fact, the reality of climate change has reached a point where it has altered the posture of much of the business community toward the threat. The question of the day is whether those alterations will be sufficiently broad that this immensely powerful sector can become part of the solution and help reverse the momentum of climate change before it is too late. For those of you who don't think climate change is a problem, this book is not for you. I'm not going to try to convince you the threat is real, and if you aren't convinced by now, I'm not sure anything will convince you. But I'll offer a suggestion as to how you might spend your time instead of listening to this book. Start an insurance company and sell flood and storm insurance policies in all those coastal communities where traditional insurers are pulling out. If you're right about climate change, you'll make a killing. I come to this project having followed the climate change story since the 1970s and having written about it since the late 1980s. I've written essays, articles, and one prior book about climate change. Some of the essays and many of the articles were for Time magazine in the 1980s and 1990s. I've tried to get the word to the broader public through op-eds and articles in massive circulation vehicles such as Parade magazine, back in 2006 when people read the news on paper and Parade had a massive circulation. I've participated in a number of documentaries and dozens of conferences, and I've given talks at scores of institutions. I've covered global warming from a wide variety of approaches, exploring its impact on the spread of disease and its potential financial consequences. In my reporting on the issue, I've traveled